Voltron Season 4 finale, A New Defender. Now this, I gotta say, was definitely a great season finale. They definitely had some good tension in there. The action was fairly decent as well. And of course, we have a character who was initially just a villain, now possibly transitioning into the role of anti-hero. Admittedly, my big theory in the last episode was that it was going to end up being the generals that would become like anti-heroes at some point, and I thought Lotor would kind of be off doing his own thing, at least, for this episode, and then maybe at some point, things would change up. But I was surprised at the way that it ended, because it ended up being Lotor that was the one that came in, and the generals were actually nowhere to be seen during this finale, so that kind of surprised me. It just ended up being a different character from that little outsourced group that's kind of just all, they're just out there on their own. And it ultimately ended up being Lotor who came in at the end to kind of make things right, which I thought was interesting. But definitely a great episode. We have, Zarkon doing his thing where he's trying to kill his son off. They end up finding Lotor because he goes past like a really far-reaching beacon. So Zarkon is like, it's Lotor, send everybody after him. And Lotor has to basically dive into the sun in order to escape, because everyone's, Zarkon is like, I want my son dead. So he has everybody going in, and the ships can't handle the, the gravitational pull. There's too much pressure on them. So the ships are falling apart, pieces are overheating. So eventually Zarkon is like, well crap, we have to pull out. And fortunately for Lotor, of course he has like his crazy special interdimensional comet ship, so he was able to survive just long enough to be able to pull out on the other side of that, which, in all honesty, the first thing that came to mind was, why didn't Zarkon just have someone go to the other side? It was like, I know they're on the sun and they're technically still behind him. They, I guess, ultimately couldn't catch up. But I would assume if it was like, you guys go right after him and then we'll kind of just curve around a little bit, that should have worked fine. And I think technically they would have caught him, especially considering he was fighting against the gravitational pull. He certainly would have been slower skimming across the surface compared to, someone just going around the sun. So I was like, not very tactful of Zarkon. It was just like, dive in and follow him, and they all got screwed. A bunch of people died, and ultimately their ships overheated for the ones that didn't explode. And Lotor was able to make his escape. And then, of course, we have kind of the big story of the whole episode is Team Voltron within Voltron are trapped on this planet, and they're stuck on this planet. Haggar ends up taking her ship there, which, of course, at the end of the last episode, when they say like, oh, Voltron is taking over this planet or whatever, she says good, because that was their plan to begin with, was to trap Voltron and blow up this entire planet, which apparently, I think they call it hexamide, which I actually thought was a cool name. That material is so powerful, at least if you have enough to cover an entire planet, it's powerful enough to blow up 10 solar systems. So they would have wiped out everything that was an issue to them if, that actually ended up succeeding. And I love the way that played out. The team wasn't able to do anything with Voltron. They tried to shoot up into space, or at least just shoot up at least past the little shields. And they couldn't do it. It was too powerful, and the ship gets, crashes back into the ground. So they have to get out of their ships and kind of skim along the surface. And it seemed like they weren't that affected, which I thought was kind of funny, because it was like, okay, it's definitely gravity. But they didn't seem like they were that affected, considering it was like holding Voltron down. I thought it would have been like a greater pressure on them. And it seemed like it started off that way, like the part where they're, using their jet boost, like they have to use their jets to like just kind of keep running, basically, because it was, they were too heavy. So it was like, okay, I can definitely see it there. And then once they like actually got, under the surface, and like once they got through that door, it seemed like it was no effect. It was like, if you weren't directly outside where those pillars were, you weren't actually affected, which I thought was interesting. But they go down and they find out that Haggar is controlling this planet, and that's where they learn about the hexamide and everything. But they get to this Altean, like, just orb. And so, basically, Alluron's like, alright, well, it's Haggar's witch, or it's Zarkon's witch Haggar that's doing this, so maybe I can find a way to kind of fight against it. It's, similar, it's the magic of, the Altean species. So, she tried to fight against it. Naturally, that ends up failing. Everyone kind of gets knocked out for a little bit, and that's how Hunk realizes what the soil is like underneath them. And so, once they get back in Voltron, they end up falling down even further, and Lance has to kind of give, the hero speech to Alluron. It's like, hey, you sensed this dark magic before the, this pressure actually took hold, which means that you can connect to this, and you've done it before. You've done it with the Bomura, and of course you do it on the ship all the time, and this may be like a grander scale and something that's not necessarily like right there to connect to, but you can do it. And of course she's able to tap into that. She basically coats Voltron in like, gravity defying magic, I guess is honestly the best way to put it. And they shoot up into the air, they blast through the shield, and then they're able to, take off from the planet. And all they can really do is warn Karan, like, hey, you need to get as many people as you possibly can as far away as possible, because this thing is going to blow up, and it's going to blow up really, really big. So they're trying to fly away, and of course Keith knew that something was wrong, especially when he talked to Karan. He was like, yeah, this ship basically stopped in space really, really far from the planet, and that was pretty much it. And Keith realized something's going on. It's like, it's victory or death. And he knew something was happening, so he takes the ship, he calls Matt and, his crew, and is like, hey, I need some support. We need to go figure out what's happening with this ship. Just destroy it, because it's probably got something to do with, why we can't get in touch with Voltron. And they're doing everything that they can. And of course, that's when Voltron eventually escapes, and it's like, all right, well, we're flying as fast as we can, but we might not actually end up escaping and, being able to stop anything. So they're dependent on Keith, Matt, and the crew. And Keith decides, all right, well, we can't, shoot the lasers or anything like that. And he was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, which I'm not going to lie, I thought they would go through with, because of the whole thing with the original Voltron series, which is, if you watch like some of my old reviews from the other seasons, that's something I've been worried about until like Shiro disappeared. My whole thing was like, I think someone's going to die. Like every fight, I was freaking out they were going to kill somebody off, because they have that in the original Voltron series where someone dies, and that's when Princess Allura becomes the new Paladin. So I was really happy that that didn't end up happening, and I thought it didn't make any sense, but because that was in my head, I was still worried about it, because I was like, we don't know, the lineage and the grandparents and how he's like part Gara and stuff. And I was like, it doesn't make sense that they would end it so early. But at the same time, all I could think of was like, I reverted back to like seasons 1 and 2, where I was like, every fight they were in, I was like, I think someone might die here. So I instantly went back to that, and I wasn't thinking logically. I was like, of course they aren't actually going to do it. And they already had the scene with Lotor where he found out that that section of space was off limits because there was going to be that massive explosion. So it was like, in that moment, I just had that complete disconnect. Like, oh yeah, like duh, they already had that scene. Of course he's going to come in at the last minute and be that ex machina savior. And so, in my head I was like, crap, they might actually, kill him off. Everyone's freaking out like the planet's actually going to explode. And then, Lotor comes in, hits it with this space comet laser beam from his ship, blows up their ship, throws Haggar off, and it's like, well, crap, it's time for us to get the F out of here. They leave, everything's great, and that's where we have our final moment where Lotor is like, hey, I know we've kind of been enemies, things haven't been great between us, but I think we need to have a discussion. And that's where we end this season. And it was a great way to end it, because I was like, crap, I want to know what happens next so bad. And I want to see where this this fight against the Empire goes, now that Lotor is going to, kind of be on their side, and what that means for the generals now that, because like I said, my main theory was, I thought they were going to be the ones to come in, because technically they have a ship as well. It could have easily been the exact same thing, where they came in and saved them at the last minute, but it ended up being Lotor. So now those 3 characters are the ones who have, still have no affiliation. And it might take some time for Lotor, but of course, this is that moment where the enemy of my enemy is going to end up being my friend. So I cannot wait to see how that ultimately ends up playing out, because it's like, you can't really trust Lotor, and it just makes me curious what that means for the next season. But definitely a great way to end it. Love the whole episode. Nice amount of tension, even though I thought for sure they're not gonna kill anybody off, right? I mean, the whole episode was called like a new defender, so I was worried about that the whole time, that somebody could actually end up dying. So that was a part of it, like just the way they did the title, and I was like, I don't really know what that means. I don't know, this could be a cool thing where they like change the design of Voltron or something, or it could mean that someone dies. I highly doubted it, but I was like, it could mean that like all of Voltron is destroyed and like there's a new version of Voltron, and by the end, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I was like, that's just not going to be the case. It would be like Matt and his people, like, because they had like 5 people. I was like, they're not going to do that with them. But it was definitely a great season finale. I'm very excited for the next season. I don't know when in the world that's happening. I would assume it's going to be next year. It would be interesting to see if they keep seasons like this, if that means we get, 2 short seasons every year. I don't know if I like that more or less, but it's kind of cool, because then, it's just less time in between. So maybe that'll happen again, and next summer it'll be the same thing, like sometime in, June or July, we will get the next season, and then just like with this one, it'll be like, a couple months after, we hit September, October, and then, boom, we're in season 6 already by the, this time next year. So I don't know if that's their plan, but either way, I'm looking forward to what we're going to be getting in the next season. This should definitely be cool. I cannot wait to see how they change this dynamic. They already changed it up so much. It was like we got Lotor as the new villain last season. By the end of the last season, his dad is alive. Now his dad is back to, Zarkon is back to being the main villain. We still have these huge mysteries there. It's like the stuff with Keith as far as his backstory. Wonder what's going to happen with Haggar and Zarkon as far as their memories go, because we got like a glimpse of that with Haggar staring in the mirror, and then nothing else. And I was like, crap. That's what I was hoping to see. That was something I thought we were going to get for this season. We still, of course, have Pidge and Matt now looking for their father now that they have each other. So there's still a ton to, that's already set up. There's not even stuff like in the future that might happen later. It's like, this is still, there are elements from like seasons 1 and 2 that are, still have yet to be answered. So it's like they've already got a lot kind of just set up, already waiting for them to answer questions about. And then there's elements like Lotor at the end here, and now, what's going to happen with the generals and what that means for them. So there's just a lot. They could still end up going to the Galra Empire, because I mentioned in my last review, they still know about his secret as far as the portal within the planet. They still know that's there, and they could still use that as their bargaining chip, even if Lotor is now, going with Team Voltron and joining the coalition for a little bit. His generals could be like, well, we didn't know that, and also, we don't want to be wherever he is because he might just try to kill us in our sleep, that sort of thing. So they could, him going to them could lead his generals to the Galra Empire. So there's a lot of ways that this can go, and excuse me, I'm very excited for the next season. Can't wait to see what they do. But of course, would love to know what you guys thought about this finale. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it, and I definitely want to know what your favorite moments were from this season. Once again, another short season, just like last time, but really enjoyed this one. I love what they did with it. I think this season was interesting because the last one, with them introducing Lotor, it focused a lot more, I felt, on the main story. And this one, I felt like they took the time. And, this is kind of one of those elements where it's like, clearly this was, could have just been one big season. And then the first half could have been the whole Lotor thing. And then the second half would have been some of these smaller elements, like Pidge having her own episode, the silly episode with them building up the coalition, but even though it was important, it was still like that super comedic episode, just like the mall one beforehand. So they definitely, I feel like this season had more of that, where you have like either silly stories or like individual character stories, and then even the ones that weren't individual character stories didn't focus on like, this is exactly what's happening with this character, here's this giant moment. Everything I felt in this season, or because it was such a short one, I felt like every single thing was just a stepping stone to these final 2 episodes. Like every single moment was more of a stepping stone rather than this moment is insanely crucial here and this moment is insanely crucial for this reason. Outside of course, Pidge's episode, that was like 100% this is crucial because it's this one character's story. And then everything else definitely had stories, like the half and half thing with the episode right after Pidge got back with Matt, and it was like, here's the important side of the story with the Galra and Lotor and Zarkon, and then here's the silly stuff with the cow. So they definitely had, important elements is definitely relevant like the whole way through. But I felt like last time was like, all right, we're introducing a new villain as well as 4 other new villain characters in the generals. So I felt like every single step in the last season was like, this is one of the most important things that we're going to see for the series, because it was constantly just like, here's building up Lotor, who's a brand new character. Here's building up this general, who's a brand new character. And it kind of just went that way through the entire season until the finale, which was like, here's the biggest surprise in the universe, almost literally. And so this season, I think, was, basically being the second half of last season, definitely, I don't want to say it slowed down, but in a sense it kind of did. It wasn't like every moment was the biggest thing ever. It was more mystery based, where it was like, what is the answer to that? And then we have to wait until the very end to get those answers, finding out, like, this is where he gets the quintessence, and finding out that the planet is still useful. Seeing him separate from his generals and how that's going to play out. Him going to Team Voltron at the end, and Zarkon still just being like this weird dude in a suit where we don't know how much he remembers and exactly where his mindset really is, and the same with Haggar. So this felt more like the slower build-up for, even though there's important stuff happening, and especially the last 2 episodes, it still felt like that slow mystery build-up where it's like, here's these little hints, and here's stuff that we kind of talk about, that we've already kind of talked about in previous seasons, but we still don't answer, and you have to wait until next season, which I don't hate. I kind of do, but that's just because I always want all the answers all the time, like we always do. But I definitely felt like this was slower pace, but not in a bad way. Like I wish I could explain it in a different way. I feel like saying it was slower pace, makes it feel like I was bored. But I never was, not for a second for this season. It just felt very different from the last one where everything was like, holy crap, this is happening and that's happening. And this time, I guess it was because they were building the coalition rather than freaking out about the coalition. I think that's a part of it. Like they were in a much more stable position in this season compared to any of the previous seasons where it was like a little, little bit by little bit, they would have people here and there. And this whole season was like, we're doing pretty good. We're doing the shows. They had a whole episode devoted to that, of course. And it's like, we're building things up. We are creating this army and it's truly building into something real to fight against the Gaur Empire. So maybe that's a part of why not everything felt like so insanely dramatic, because they were actually in a fairly decent position compared to any of the other seasons where it's like, it's just the five of us, or that sort of thing, flying the ship. And then we got a couple of allies, Allura and Karen initially, and then our pseudo rotating cast of characters going into controlling Voltron. So it's definitely built up. They have more allegiances, and it should be interesting to see where it goes. I think that's why it felt this way, where it's like, it's not slow paced, it felt stable. I think that's the better way to describe it. This season felt stable because the characters were just in such a more relaxed position compared to every other time where it's like, we don't know what's going to happen. We may never have backup. We don't have backup, that sort of thing. So I think that's what it was for this season. I could feel how lax things were, but it was still very entertaining. And of course, like I said, I could still see every tiny little thread connecting and building up to these, especially last two episodes. So definitely love this season. And like I said, can't wait to see what they do with the next one. Like I said though, of course, it should be fun. Next season should be fun. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about this one. Like I said, favorite moments, least favorite moments from the entire season. Definitely want to know your theories as well for next season and just what you guys want to see naturally. If you want it to be short like this, so we get like 2 short seasons, or if you want them to go back to the longer season, I think I would prefer that. But if I'm being totally honest, as far as reviews go, I can't help but be like, yeah, the 6-episode seasons is great for me because I can shoot through them in a weekend and it's just 6 reviews, and then I'm like, all right, back to my regular reviews and other random videos. So it kind of helps me, but I'd still do it. I mean, it's Voltron is freaking great. So we'd love to know what you guys thought about this finale. Favorite moments from this season, least favorite moments if you have somewhere it's just like, I hated this, or definitely want to know what you guys wish happened. I still want to know all the mysteries that I don't know. So that's just the answers I don't have. That's everything I wish I had. But like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about the whole season, this finale in general, and of course your theories for next season, and just what you guys want to see and hope to see for next season as well. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.